Hi, welcome to Ruby Bro, and my name is Jim, and today I'm going to share with you how to create a very quick web app using Ruby on Rails 6. So before we start, Ruby on Rails 6 was launched just a couple of months ago, and I'm speaking in 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic, and even with that issue, I don't think that should stop us from learning and improving our skills, right? So I think it's like today, I'm going to show you something that you can read it, but I just want you to see it with your own eyes, how quickly you can actually create your own app running and get it go, okay? So what you're looking at is my desktop. I'm using a Mac. I did not update it to Catalina because of many issues and softwares that I still want to run using my older Mac. But the commands and everything else is pretty similar of what you would be doing with other kind of operating system, including Ubuntu, Linux, and other kind of flavor of Linux, and even PC. I do have a PC. I'm not doing tutorials or video with it because there's some complications. Maybe in the future I can dedicate full time or more time just to show how the environment works for Windows. But most of the developers that I know for Ruby, they actually use Linux or Mac in order to get things done. Now let's start. So you are seeing my terminal. It might look slightly different than what you have. I use iTerminal 2. I set up with my own bash profile with customizations about color, what it should be showing or not. But I will just start with making a folder. And then I will just log into RubyBro. And now this is my root folder, and here I'm going to create the app of the Rails. So the command is Rails new, and then the name of the app, I would just use blog. Now, there's actually a lot of things happening in the background, right? So first, you have to have the right version of Ruby installed. Then you have to install Bundler, install Rails itself, a lot of things. Today, in this video, to make it very short, I'm just sharing with you that unless if your system is very different, you wouldn't be able to do it as fast as I do. But in general, what happened is that you just run the command Rails news, whatever the name, and then magically behind the scene, Rails, you pull all the libraries and dependencies, and then it will create a folder with everything inside, and then you can actually run and see how that goes, right? Now it's installing Sass and building native extension. So the process is that, interestingly, like in Ruby, for Ruby programmers, depending which library you use, there's a lot of native building extensions, right? What is that supposed to mean is that a lot of these libraries, they actually will install in your computer and will try to compile whatever that code is, which they might have dependency beyond Ruby, right? Most of the time, they have dependency in C, right? Meaning that they are actually have components that are made programmed in C language or C++, whatever that is, or even Java, and then the system will build those libraries, compile those libraries based on your operating system. That's why it can take a little bit more time to just run it, right? But this is natural, and there's nothing wrong with it. Your first installation, maybe after a major update, you might see that your computer is trying to build these libraries as it goes, right? And meanwhile, what I will do is that I will show that to you that I use Sublime as my editor, Sublime 3. Okay. You can use VS Code. I also have VS Code, and it's actually pretty amazing, to be honest, how it actually works. Both app, I think they are very fast and responsive. VS Code in Exchange, I think it has a lot of features that is hidden inside of Sublime. But that's a different discussion about how that's supposed to be. But definitely you can actually use VS Code or Sublime or whatever other text editor for you that you feel more comfortable. Maybe in another time I can make a video just to talk about the difference between them both, and you can pick whichever you want, right? Now it is still pulling, but now interestingly we are in the JavaScript dependency. So the other thing about the Rails Ruby on Rails 6, just like some previous versions, it has a lot of dependency with JavaScript, especially if you're creating a lot of front-end stuff based on those frameworks that are super famous right now, like Vue. I don't think Ember is that famous anymore, but Ember, Angular, JS, and so on and so forth. And Rails 6 uses Webpack, which is basically a package manager for JavaScript, and try to assemble everything all together for us on Rails, right? Again, this is not a specific tutorial or anything with Webpack, but you will also see that Rails is pulling things from the JavaScript or Node.js kind of side of it. Now, everything installed, as you can see, and then you can just log it into the system, right, blog. And the first thing we can do is to run rails.s. When you run basically Rails server, that's what it means. We see a lot of message, but what matters to us is that we can actually access the web page right now. So I will just open an incognito. I can type localhost 3000, and then you can see that Rails is running on my computer. If you don't want to type localhost, you can also use the localhost natural IP address, which is 127.0.1. Oh, not 5,000, 3,000. And then it's running. You can actually define which port you want your page to come out, and that's easily done, but this is not the scope of this video. Now you can see that it's great. You are running Rails, and what can I do with it right now, right? As I said, our objective is to make a blog. The stereotypical tutorial of Rails is that you just go to Rails website, right? And then you click the tutorial and you will see the blog post tutorial. But here I will show it to you regardless how it is done, right? One of the most versatile command in Rails besides running, oh, by the way, to quit, you just do Control-C, and then the server that your computer is running on will stop running Rails. So if you try to refresh, it's not going to happen anything because the server is shut down, right? Now, to create my blog, I need posts, right? Well, the next command where I'm going to show here is the scaffold generator. So what happened is that I imagine a model, right? Basically a function, right? In this case, a blog has many posts. And based on the posts, I try to imagine what this post has to have. So let's start. So what I will do is type Rails again, G or generate, right? And then scaffold. And then I will type the name of the class, which is post. You can actually use it as like this too. It doesn't matter if you put uppercase or lowercase. And then after the name of the model, what you have to do is to put the variables that you want to have. So let's visit a typical, stereotypical web blog post. Let me see, blogs. Let's see. I'm just looking at it. Let me just bring in here. I would just choose Toronto Light Blog. So here what happened is that I have the image, I have the category, the title, right? The author, the date, and the content of the text inside, right? So why don't we replicate something similar like that, right? So again, what do I want for a blog post is the following. I want to have a title, and I will define as a string type. The next thing that I want to have is the category, and it will be also a string type. And then after that, I want to have the author, which is also string type. Date is defined. Rails will magically create all the relationship of the date of when things are created, right, and updated, so we don't have to touch on that. And then the next thing that I would like to put is actually the image. The image in this case, there's multiple ways to do that. We could upload, but again, for the sake of brevity, it's just the URL. So image URL, and is also a string type. Okay? Now I click enter, and magically behind the scene, right, the system will just generate all these files. So let's take a deep look. So it creates the migration of the file, which is related with the database. We have to create a table for the post so we can hold it. It creates a lot of models, pages, tests, controller. It creates the views with the HTML, right? It even creates the JSON files, CSS file, and so on and so forth. So now let's try to run on purpose. It will not work. You will see. Now, when I try to access the page, you see that, look, there's pending migrations. So Rails is smart enough to know that you are creating something new, right? And you haven't done your job yet. So I would do Control-C. And then now I will do Rails, right? DB migrate. Before Rails 6 or even 5, I don't remember well, but you have to use rake db migrate. This command will basically create the tables into our database. And currently, the database that I'm using is just SQLite. I'm not using anything like MySQL or Postgres at this point for this demo. We can change that very, very quickly later. Now, when I do Rails S, let's run the page again. Okay, you're on Rails. And then I will type posts, plural. And from there, the system can combine the CSS and JavaScript if there's any. And then you can see that there's just like testing for Ruby Bro, category Rails, author Chim, oops, image URL, HTTP. I will just copy an image somewhere. And let's just pull the Cybertruck image. Copy image address and create a post. Okay, you see that here is like, okay, I have this. Oh, besides, I even forgot how to add the text, right? Okay, so as I said, it's like it's missing the text, right? It's like we created everything ready, but when I see, okay, it's not exactly what I want because I want this image is not as a URL, even though I have everything else. So in Rails, things can be fixed quite easily. So here I have my console again. I will just do Control-C to exit the Rails server that I have. And then I will do Rails G migration. What I'm doing here is to add the field into the existing model, right? And then I can do, per convention, you do add in upper scale, and then I will say content, right, which is what I want to do, to post, which is the model, and then I just do content slash text, colon text. And then I do Rails DB migrate, right? It will add the content into the existing model, but I have to do a lot of other changes. So I have my shortcut of Sublime. I will just open Sublime into my folder. What's happening here may look a little bit scary, but it's not that scary at all, right? With time, I will, in another video, I can show exactly how the file structure is. But once you have the Rails web app is actually a collection of files and folders. The moment that I add something into an existing model, right, and this is a sequence that I'm going through, right? So first, I want to go to model and check on the post. There's nothing there. So even though I'm adding more fields and there were fields already existing, I'm not worried about the model. So close it. The next one is actually the controller. So there's a post controller, right? So I'm following the MVC model, even though that's not the framework that people use anymore, but I'm starting with something close to the database and then moving to the model, which connects the app to the database. And then I instead of going to C to V, which is the view, I actually want to go to the controller, which connects the model and the view. Then later I go to the view. So that's the sequence that I do. Here, what I'm worried about is that, hey, I have a new parameters here, and I would just add content, which is the name of the variable that I have. Everything else is actually the same, so I don't need to change anything here. Post params is a way for Rails as a security measures to forbid the users to add additional fields or change more stuff that they should do in my web app. Now I close it and I'm going to the views. You see that there's posts. So Scaffold creates almost everything for you. And the first thing that I want to do is in the forms. I know that now I have a new field, so I have title, category, author, image, URL. I'll just copy this section of the HTML and generate content and content and save it. The next one, edit, calls the form template. Nothing to worry about it. Index, I have to add another section here. So most of the time you don't need to know exactly how it looks. Just put it there first, and then we will adjust as we go. Right? I can even copy this part and just change image URL to content. Okay, and then new calls the same form. Here in this show, I'll put content, which calls content. And finally, that's it. So why don't we run and see how that goes? So Rails S. And again, in this app, there's no login, no nothing. So it's not like something that we can just put it into production, right? Every user can create this post. So now you see that there's content, and I can actually add. I have a big text field here, but it does not look that large. Update the post, and now I can see it here. Now, when I look at this, this doesn't look like a blog. It looks just like a table that looks kind of fuzzy or ugly, right? Now, what I can do, all right, just adjusting the screen, I can do some magic here. So let's start with the index page. In Rails, what happened is that by default, it will create everything as a table like this. But nothing stops me, right, to do the following. I can actually do like this. Let's see, section, some HTML, right? And then I do post, right? Here I'm editing in ERB. So for an array of posts for each of them, right? I will name each of these posts as posts. And for each, and I will just put an end here because I will forget about it. We keep looping forever. Right? And for each of these posts, I can actually just create a div, right? Just for the sake of it. But then I can put an h4, and then I can put small. So for the h4, I will do as, I'll just copy. I'm lazy now. I just create the title for small. I want category, and then I want to put another one. Let's say bold. I'll put the author section. And then all image. Now for the image, I'm gonna do image tag, and that will transform that text URL into and put it inside of an image tag, right? And then finally the content I will put inside of a P. Right. Again, there will be some adjustments that it's easier just to see it when we're running. Oops. Save, and let's run. Okay. So we have the information, but there's some extra information here. So let's check it out, what's going on. And Rails, which is the categories, is on the same line as the chim. So what's happening here is that the h4 might be too small, so I will upgrade to h2. The small for Rails for the category, I might have to jump a line, right? BR, and then another BR here, right? So if we do this, we see that we are changing the idea here, but I will put BR category, and then here author, right? I can even put the date of the post. Yep, create it. And then the text, the image is there. I can actually change the HTML later or the CSS. For now, look. Oh, and we need to just remove the repeating. Okay, not working. and somewhere it's repeating, shooting the results, which is a section. Okay, now I remove that. So then this whole table, in theory, you could just hide it, right? I was just commenting, and then you have the new post here, right? So that will look like more like a post. I can change the height, and you will see it if it looks good. You can do this. It's not ideal, but for the sake of demonstration, this is what it could be, right? Again, here, I could do it. Let me see. Post and then I can do it in multiple different ways. But anyway, so I can do it like this, and then you can see the post or in the table format. You also saw that I was able to show as an image instead of URL. So that pretty much gives you like this basic functionality of a blog post, and you can even, which pretty much is the core idea of developing web apps, right? So it's like you have a core entity, and that entity saves a lot of information, either be as a text, as a number, as an image, or anything else. And I think when you master that, that gives you the building blocks for all other type of apps that you've seen out there from Shopify, Airbnb, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's pretty much what I want to show you, how fast and interesting it is to create this blog post web app, right? I can stop my blog, and that's it. And then that covers pretty much our first Rails tutorial. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching Ruby Bro, and let's go for the next one later. Bye.